So my gut feeling is that if you do want a new iPhone, you should seriously consider the iPhone 8 if you actually want one anytime soon. The only thing you're really missing out on is the new whiz-bang technology in the 10. As performance-wise, they're identical, or the iPhone 8 may be faster a little bit, because the iPhone 10 has actually got a higher resolution screen and it's having to work harder to display stuff. So there are reasons to choose the 8 over the 10, mainly availability. Price is a significant factor, given that the iPhone 10's cheapest model is $1,800. The iPhone 8's cheapest model is $1,250. So you're talking a big jump up just to get the new whiz-bang technology. I think it was in my email I summarised that. Yeah, have you got my table there? Have you? Yep, I did fill in all the details. So yeah, so if you're wanting to buy a new iPhone and you think you can manage without the whiz-bang technology, then the 8 is a very good choice. If you really want to hang out for the whiz-bang technology and you can hold on to your current phone for a while longer, then get in the queue basically. And if you order it through Apple, the way they usually do it is they'll only charge your credit card when the thing ships, not when you order it. But I don't know what it will be like if you order it through somebody like Vodafone, for example. I'm not sure what their procedures are for that. Okay, camera is the same basic capabilities as the 7, but it's got some significant new features, especially in the Plus model. If I go and find the tech specs page, no, not that one. Let's go to if I go to the iPhone compare, where's he gone? Looking for the page which has the comparisons. There, compare. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the 7 next to the 8, so I have to go and see all models. There we go. Right, so that's sort of as close as I could get to a listing of the basic specifications. So size-wise, the 8 and the 8 Plus, the same size as the 7 and the 7 Plus, so 4.7, 5.5 inches. There's no change to details like water resistance. The camera is the same resolution. However, the new models have a much more capable camera for video. In particular, they can record twice as fast. They can do 4K video at 60 frames per second rather than 30 frames per second. The Plus model adds this new feature called portrait lighting. And what that does is it lets you adjust lighting effects on the photo even after you've taken it by doing different sort of lighting directions and highlights and things like that. And I've seen some commentary from photographers who say this is absolutely amazing. It's a really good feature. The same feature is available on the 10, so you're not missing out on that feature by going to the 8, or getting the 10 instead. So it's basically the 10's got pretty much all the features of the 8. The other feature that's changed relating to the camera is that they're now using, or they default to using, a new file format for photos and videos that has a significant space saving. So you can actually store quite a lot more photo or video content in the same amount of flash storage compared to the previous generations. The other related detail is that they doubled the storage sizes again. So the iPhone 8 starts at 64 gigs, whereas the iPhone 7 is 32 gigs, and there's also a 256 gig model compared to a 128 gig. So Touch ID is standard on the iPhone 8. That's one area where the iPhone 10 is considerably different. It now uses your face rather than your thumbprint as its authentication method. And you may be aware of competing phones from companies like Samsung, which have a face identification feature that can be fooled with a photo. Apple's one can't, because it actually tries to do it does a three-dimensional map of your face and detects the surface and is able to identify it's got depth in the right places. So Apple also demonstrated that they tested it with face masks made up by Hollywood film studios to look like real people. It still didn't work because it needed to be an active face, not just a static face. So Apple claims that it's in the order of 1 in a million chance of a false recognition of somebody else looking like you, if it's not an identical twin or something obvious, compared to 1 in 50,000, so it's 200 times better than Touch ID in terms of rejecting the wrong people. So that's pretty good.
What if somebody bursts into your house and ties you to a chair?
Well, like, if somebody's burst into your house and tying you to a chair, it doesn't make any difference. They can either hold your thumb on the thing or put the camera in front of your face, or they're going to hold a knife to you until you tell them the passcode. So I think that's a false... It's a material, yes. Interestingly, they have actually added a new feature in iOS 11. There is a hidden combination you can do if you're about to get mugged, which will disable Touch ID. Which on the older models is you push the power button 5 times quickly, and the newer ones you squeeze the side buttons together at the same time. So you can actually disable Touch ID or Face ID discreetly in your pocket, hopefully, before you have to give your phone to the police officer or the customs agent or the robber. But of course, that won't help if it's a robber who's going to demand the passcode anyway. So, yeah. Okay, so, yes, this actually is only the minor technical details there, so it doesn't go into the gruesome details. If I go back to the previous page, and we go and have a look at the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 8 separately, and go and look at technical specs. That's probably the easiest way to do this. Technical specs. I'm just trying to remember what the details were in the camera, because it's trying to remember all this information and at short notice. So the new chip, of course, which has got all these whiz-bang new bits of technology inside it, this neural engine is actually involved in the Face ID recognition thing, so it's quite clever. One of the cameras in the Plus model got better, if I remember right. It has a wider aperture, I think, which means more light gets into it. Improves things. Where's the camera? No, was it the wide angle one? No, they look the same. No, it's 10. The iPhone 10 has a better camera for the one of the two. It's got more aperture. What was the buzzword? Compliant. Oh, that's the new file format, HEIF or HEIF, as Apple's pronouncing it, as the optional new file format for taking photos. It's mostly the video recording which improved, if I remember right, and also in the Plus model, did they add optical image stabilization on the front camera? I'm trying to remember. No, that's not mentioned. No, sorry, that's right. It was both the cameras on the back had optical image stabilization, whereas only one of them did before. So it's improved if you're zooming. That's right. So subtle differences, but it improves things enough, especially with the new portrait mode feature. And the other neat thing about this new file format, the HEIF one, is it allows you to, if you use the portrait mode feature on the iPhone 7. Which allows you to take basically a blurred background. You take a portrait photo of somebody with the rear camera, and it will subtly blur the background using, I think they call it a bokeh effect. I don't know how you pronounce it. B-O-K-E-H is what the word is spelt. And it gives you this sort of fading in the background, so you can see the general pattern, but it loses the sharp detail, so it makes the person stand out a lot better in the photo. So you can actually adjust that after the fact with the iPhone 8, which you couldn't in the iPhone 7. And they've also added that ability for taking selfies with the same effect, because it does it with the front camera, not just the back camera. Whoopee! Okay, that's all technical guff. Don't care about that. Siri, buttons, etc. So there's not a lot has changed, except there's some details about how the buttons get used, which I won't bore you with. Battery life is similar. Looking at the iPhone 10, yes, it's all screen, as they say. It's going to be a bit different because it actually has, you'll notice it's got this notch in the top. That's where all the video sensors and things for the Face ID, the camera and so on are located. And that's actually a cutout in the screen, effectively. You can't use that bit. So it has a different structure for its status bar compared to what you'd be used to in older models. So they've got little icons on that side, little icons on that side, but they don't have the entire status bar in the same way as they did before. And there's other subtle differences, like if you want to activate the control center, on the iPhone 10 you swipe down from the top right, whereas on the iPhone 8 and all earlier models you swipe up from the bottom edge. The reason for that is because there's no home button. To do the same function as the home button, you swipe up from the bottom on the iPhone 10. So they've had to change the gesture for the control center. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Basically, more or less all I wanted to say about these things. All the technical information is available on Apple's website, and they can probably do a better job describing it than I can. The iPhone 8s are already available, and you can probably walk into any of the local retailers now and have a look at one. The iPhone 10 is going to be available for pre-order at the end of October the 27th, if I remember right. Yeah, 27th of October, and nominally available on the 3rd of November. What that means in practice, we don't know, and that's worldwide. So it's going to take it'll be you and everybody else in the world trying to get one simultaneously if you pre-order it. So.
Does that mean you can't pre-order before the 27th?
No, Apple will not take any orders until they open them at probably midnight or something like that on the 27th. I don't know what the exact timing is.
Although
So
when they did the 8, it was 7 PM, wasn't it?
yeah, it's a weird time sometimes.
Yeah,
So basically, you need to keep an eye on things and not have the website crash on you because it's likely to be overloaded with everybody else trying to do the same thing.
And it is a smaller phone.
Yes, size-wise, the iPhone 10 is a little bit larger than the iPhone 8 or 7 or 6, but it's actually got the same content area horizontally, and it's vertically taller than the iPhone 6 Plus's screen, but shorter than the actual body. So you can imagine it as being only a little bit larger than the iPhone 6, 7 or 8. So, but it's got a much bigger screen, taller mostly, rather than wider.
It's basically edge-to-edge glass as opposed to
You
rim.
You pretty much imagine you've eliminated the top and bottom stripes, and you get pretty close to it, what the shape is, and then it's fractionally larger. And the screen is going to be a lot higher quality. Of course, you can't actually see one physically until somebody's got one, so it's hard to judge that apart from reading online commentary. The other new major products were the Apple Watch, which I've already talked about briefly, and the new generation Apple TV. I think I've covered everything about those in the magazine already. There's no need to go over them in much detail further than that. Just to point out that if you've already bought a fourth generation Apple TV, there's not a lot of point rushing out and buying the new 4K one unless you've got a 4K TV, because it's not going to make a huge difference in terms of what you can do with it. But if you had been holding off buying an Apple TV, you now have a choice between the 2-year-old model and the current model, basically, and paying more for the current one.
David, these technological advancements on phones
Yep.
will presumably flow through to the iPads at some stage. They haven't said anything about that.
Well, the OLED screen technology is already on the watch, and other manufacturers are already using it on their phones. The reason that Apple's taking so long is that any technology that makes it into the mainstream iPhone model has to be able to be delivered in the quantity of 150 million a year. That sort of order of magnitude. This one is a much smaller volume, so there's going to be a lot of disappointed people, I think, who simply can't get it at a reasonable pace. But things like OLED screens, Apple's basically waited until they can get them in what they believe to be sufficient quantity, and I think they will be overwhelmed by the orders for them. But it's also a question of size. So as the screen gets bigger, it gets harder and harder to manufacture. So it may eventually show up in the iPad. One thing I just remembered, which I hadn't mentioned yet, the new iPhones also implement the True Tone feature, which is added on the iPad Pros, and that one gives you the ability to automatically adjust the white balance of the screen according to the ambient light. So if you're in incandescent lights, it'll change what looks white to match what your lighting is, and it'll look right. The colours will shift automatically according to your light conditions. So if you're under bright white fluorescent light or sunlight or low dim ambient light, everything will still look white, and it will match the lighting effectively. So that's a feature which has now made it to the iPhone with this latest generation. But it's basically a trade-off of features. They implement what they can, where they can, in the quantity that they can. The iPhone is the biggest product they make by a long shot. So one other feature they've added is all the new models can now support Apple's 29-watt power adapter with USB-C and cable to charge faster. So if you want to plug it in and you buy this adapter as an optional extra, which this plus cable costs close to $100. I already bought it for my iPad Pro because it charges so slowly without it. But I could actually use that to charge an iPhone 8 or 10 and get faster charging than you could with the charger that comes with it. So that's useful to know. But only if you've bothered to buy the extra adapter. So Other iPhone related questions? No? Right, so what I was going to do then is just show, actually I'll use my phone rather than using my iPod. It'll probably look better. Do that. I don't want personal hotspot on right now. Let's just turn that off. And then I want to run QuickTime and go new movie recording from my phone. Why not? Why not? It should be working. That's better. Right. Okay, so this is a useful little technique I've discovered, is that QuickTime Player can record the screen of the iPhone, so I can actually avoid having to fiddle with projector settings. We can just display it on my computer screen. So here is my iPhone running iOS 11. It goes, looks a bit, so it sort of works it out. It's an iPhone 6 Plus, so that's the oldest model of this size. You can see generally it looks the same on all existing iPhones. You'll notice that the App Store icon has changed appearance. It's now a somewhat subtly different looking A shape.
Slightly rural.
Yeah, it looks like it's got ice cream sticks rather than they used to have paintbrush and things like that. Yeah. One other obvious difference is the dock down the bottom does not have names on anything anymore. So the expectation is the icons you've got on your dock, you know what they are, you don't need the name. So they've got rid of the name. I don't know why, but that's about the best logic I can think of. Appearance-wise, it's all pretty similar to iOS 10. Oh, it's not going to work. I'm trying to operate it with the mouse. That's not going to get me very far. Settings looks pretty similar. They've added this new emergency SOS feature was the first thing I noticed in there, which allows you to, it tells you that if you push the side button 5 times, it can call emergency services, and that automatically works out what the correct number is depending on which country you're in. So as long as you know that gesture, you can use it to call emergency services. So Shane's got his one up on the screen right now, but I can do it on here so you can see what it does. I haven't noticed there's an auto call setting, which is off. If I turn that on, it'll actually try and dial 111, which I don't want it to do. So if I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in theory, as long as it actually registered the button press. No, it didn't. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Problem is that the case I've got on is actually preventing the button. There it is.
There it is. Right there.
Like that. It gives you a slider to call the emergency number. So I won't do that, and you can cancel it. That's what it gives you if you don't have... and it disables Touch ID, as I said before. So now I have to type in my passcode, so I'm going to unplug my phone so you can't see me typing in my passcode. And then plug it back in again.
Was that done through QuickTime Player?
Yep. Come back again, yep. So you can, if you want, set it up for auto call. If you do, it gives you a 3-second countdown with optional audio before it will actually make the call. So that's one of the new features. Again, not clicking buttons on the screen. Contacts, calendars, I'm trying to remember what else is obvious that's changed. Can you think of anything, Shane? There's lots of little things that have changed.
Where did we get that settings screen from?
What settings screen?
The previous one you had up.
Scroll down, it's just called Emergency SOS.
Oh, that's
It's part of the normal settings.
It's part of normal settings. Well, that's one thing which has changed. Notice the big bold heading settings? That's now a feature everywhere. It was a feature of the Music app in previous versions, but if you have a look at App Store, it looks considerably different. If I go to the Today view, which is the default one, App Store now has these sort of this Today view, which gives you a whole bunch of things to look at. It's kind of like a mini magazine, sort of highlighting apps of the day and that sort of thing, and games and other things like that. So that's completely new feature in App Store. There is, down the bottom you'll notice there's a games section as distinct from apps. So if you are particularly interested in games, it's easier to find them. If you're particularly not interested in games, it's easier to ignore them, which is good for both groups of people. So games only shows you games, and apps only shows you non-games. Though definitions are sometimes a little bit hazy if it's some kind of sort of game-like demo, but it's not actually a game, then it will appear in the apps section. The updates section is one thing that I found that I don't like in iOS 11 is they no longer tell you how big the updates are. You may recall it has numbers telling you this is a 150 megabyte download or whatever it might be.
And it
So
gives you what update it is as well.
sorry.
It also gives you the version as well.
Yeah, that
So
information.
size.
Yeah, it just doesn't tell you that information. So you can at least look at the app description and then see from that how big the entire app is, because that is there somewhere down here. There it is. So it tells you the size of the entire app, but it doesn't tell you how big the update is, because the update will be somewhat smaller than that. So that's a feature I don't like. I've also found that it appears the updates tab does not refresh itself automatically like it used to. I have to manually refresh it every time I want to check for updates. I'm not sure what was going on there. That might just be a temporary glitch in the first version or something like that. And that, otherwise the search feature is pretty similar. So it looks different. If I go into one of the apps just so you can see, it's got animated videos in there as well. You may have just noticed playing at the bottom, so they've added video capabilities. If I go into Night Sky just as an example, it shows you the app developer can provide a video showing you what the app looks like rather than just static images. So it's nicer seeing what it actually looks like while you're using the app rather than just sort of getting a general picture from the static images. So that's quite nice. And you can play the videos or not. And what else have they done? Ratings and reviews. It's probably, I think it's laid out better. It's easier to read. It does tell you the version numbers in there and that sort of thing, who's selling it, all that sort of thing. So all the technical information is there as it was before. If you do download updates over cellular data, they've increased the maximum size. It was 100 megabytes, now it's 150. So you just be aware of that if you have a limited amount of cellular data available. Don't assume that because you can download an update, it's relatively small. They're getting bigger all the time. Let me think. The iPad is a more interesting demo, so I just wanted to concentrate on iPhone stuff first, just so you can get a general feel for it. If I go into Messages, that's one other one that I use regularly. You'll notice also it's got a big heading at the top saying Messages, which does scroll out of view, so it doesn't wasting that screen space all the time. And if I go into a message, if you don't mind, Shane, I'll just use you. It now has a more prominent message app bar along the bottom here for getting iMessage apps, which were already there. They were just buried behind an icon before, so now they're making them more prominent to give you more incentive to pay attention to what you've actually got on there. So those are all apps that I've got installed that actually have got plugins for the Messages app, so I can use them in Messages in various ways. So that's a new feature, which is obvious. One other, if you have an iPhone Plus size model, one thing they have done is they've got rid of the extra buttons on the side of the keyboard, which irritated me because there used to be left and right arrow buttons and some extra things like that. That's gone for some reason. I don't know why they decided to get rid of them. That's irritating because I use those often. If I go into Notes, for example.
Yeah, it's weird because they've done that and they haven't stretched the keyboard out to the edge where those keys were, which looks really blotchy.
So if I come here and start typing, it doesn't appear in any app. It's not just So you can see there that also the styles thing's gone. There used to be a bold, italic, underline thing there.
Yeah,
So I didn't actually use them all that often, but it was sometimes navigating I find inconvenient unless I've got arrow keys to move around. That was only on the Plus models though, so I suspect they got rid of it because they're now somewhat of a edge case because the non-Plus models and the iPhone 10 don't have that feature. Wouldn't have it anyway because they've got a bigger keyboard, a smaller keyboard. Let me think. Other major changes, I think weather doesn't look significantly different. No, I'm not in master anymore.
So we changed the battery icons and silly icons at the top. They look.
Yeah, that's right. It actually has bars for the cellular rather than dots again, which I think looks nicer. Control centre, that's a big one.
Yes.
That is the new control centre. So it has more controls in it than it does before, and I've actually customised mine a bit. The second to bottom row is not normally there, so I've added those. You can actually add several more buttons that weren't there before, and they've also hidden things behind some of the existing buttons. So you'll notice, for example, the top left corner has airplane. It has a new button there to turn on and off cellular data, which is the green one with the sort of cell tower on it, and then Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And there is this interesting point here. The Wi-Fi and Bluetooth buttons no longer turn those features off. What they do is they disconnect you from those features. So if you tap the Wi-Fi button, it means disconnect from my current Wi-Fi network. It does not prevent you using AirDrop, other Wi-Fi features that involve other Apple products, and so forth. And also, it automatically turns itself back on again at 5 AM, or if you move too far away from your previous location. So the purpose of that is now to disconnect from a misbehaving Wi-Fi network rather than turning your Wi-Fi off completely, which I think is actually more useful. But you need to be aware of it so that if you're expecting it to completely turn Wi-Fi off, it won't actually persist in having the Wi-Fi, but it just stops you connecting automatically.
Is there a separate flight mode button?
Yes, airplane, right above that. And that does turn everything off. If I turn that on, we'll lose internet, we'll lose everything.
So you've got some control.
Yep. Interestingly, it didn't actually highlight the two buttons correctly. So, they're still turned on, that's why. Yep, it's using them.
If you want to plug mine in, because I've got force touch, you can show the.
I can do that anyway. What I was going to say is, just using it as another example, you won't be able to see it on the screen here, but if I run my finger up and down, that's actually adjusting the brightness on my screen. So it's actually a slider rather than being up and down arrow buttons. And if I do a long touch on the blob in the corner there, it brings up the more detailed version, which gives you two more controls. You can turn on, that's where the AirDrop setting is gone, and also there's now a setting in there for personal hotspot. And you sort of need to play with this to get used to what else it can do, but some of the others have got, like if I tap on the camera one and hold long enough, and if you have an iPhone 6S or later, that's a 3D touch, which is a harder push than normal, rather than being a long touch, which is what it is on my one.
Yeah,
but
so
that's
I just basically go like
Confusing at first.
yeah, you have to get used to that difference, which I haven't yet. So it gives you extra options hidden behind the initial command. So the flashlight's now got a brightness setting, so you can actually turn the flashlight on brightly or dimmer if you really want to. For example, is that off? Yes. And the timer can be adjusted rather than being a one-off thing. And I don't know if the calculator does anything. That just runs. The calculator looks different as well, but that's not interesting. So anyway, the other ones I've added here. There is an Apple TV remote built into the iPhone as an item in the control centre. You can add a stopwatch. There is a new feature called Do Not Disturb While Driving. If you turn that on, what it does is it detects you when you're moving fast enough to be in a car and stops you getting notifications and text messages and phone calls, and that sort of thing. So it's actually quite a useful feature to avoid you getting distracted by your phone if you feel that you need that.
We were talking about this today on
Yep.
the national program, and they said, if I get someone to do it.
Yes. So it's an optional feature, but you can turn it on and it will do it. It will auto detect it. Now the other one I got to the left here, which looks like a record button, is a new screen recording feature. If you tap that, what it does is it counts down and starts recording everything that's happening on your screen and creates a video of it. So you can actually demonstrate something you're doing on your phone and record a video and record it into your camera roll. And then it's doing it again now, so actually, except it may not be able to because I'm doing the video to the computer. That may confuse it. But one other feature it's got related to that, if I tap and hold on it, I have that's why, it was a third-party app. You can actually have third-party apps hooking into this. So anybody who's ever experienced me helping them remotely with TeamViewer on their computer, where I can see what's going on your screen and type things, it's now possible to do at least half of that functionality on an iPhone or an iPad running iOS 11, as long as I spend a lot more money to get the more advanced version of TeamViewer. Basically, it can record the screen and have it available to an app that you choose from this little menu. And so if you have the TeamViewer app installed, somebody who's who's assisting you can run the TeamViewer software on their computer and see what's on your screen on your iPhone or iPad, but not actually control anything. So it means I can, for example, be talking to somebody on the phone while they are having problems with something on their iPhone. They can actually run the screen recording thing. If they've got the TeamViewer app installed, I can connect to their phone. I can see exactly what's on their screen while I'm talking to them. I'm not sure how that's going to work if you're talking to me on the phone you want my help with, but at least if you're talking on another phone, it's easy enough. And then I can actually see what's happening rather than you trying to describe it to me. So that's a useful feature which I've been playing with. Only problem is I have to pay TeamViewer twice as much per month to actually have that capability, and I'm debating whether I want to do that. So the settings for the control center are all in settings, of course, so you can customize which items appear there. So there's a control center section, and you can go to customize controls. So you can see I've added a few in the top list already, but there are all these other ones as well. So accessibility, shortcuts, alarm, guided access, low power mode, magnifier, notes, text size, voice memos and wallet can all be in the control center if you want to put them there. You can customize it to your heart's content. You can't put third-party stuff in there, it's only standard Apple features, but that at least gives you a fair chunk of it. I think that's mostly what I wanted to cover on iOS 11 on the iPhone. So, what will...
When's that going to be available?
Already. It was released last week.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Let's close that.
97 times, I should.
It won't have told you yet, possibly because it only checks once a week. So it was released last Wednesday, New Zealand time, Wednesday. So by Wednesday, your phone will have told you that it's available.
No reason not to, I guess.
Only issue is if you're concerned about compatibility with third-party 32-bit applications, which one have I got them on? Let me just find out. I've deleted them mostly from one of my devices. I'll check where they are. General about.
And they're for iPhone 6 and
Yes, I'll put this back on again.
Now there's another one you might not know of.
Hang on.
If you
Let's
take,
go back here again.
now I don't know if you can do this online, which I've only just picked this up. If you take a screenshot of something, it actually posts
that's good.
a 1
Yes,
second picture.
I will show you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if you have any apps which are old enough, which basically means they haven't been updated for more than 2 years, that they never got 64-bit code added to them. It means they're still 32-bit. They will not run on iOS 11. If your device is running iOS 10.3.3 or 10.3 or 1 or 2 or 3, 10.3 or later, there is a setting under Settings, General, About, Applications. Now you'll notice my applications there says 200 with a little chevron to the right. 200 is the total number of applications I have installed on my phone. The little chevron will only appear there if you have any 32-bit applications. But then you tap it and it tells you these apps may slow down your iPhone and will not work with iOS 11 if they're not updated. Everything in that list, and I've already deleted most of mine, I just left those 3 as an example, will not run. If I try and open those applications, it brings up an error message which says this application needs to be updated by the developer and it won't let you run it. So in iOS 10.3.3 it just grumbles at you. In iOS 11 you cannot run them at all. There's no possibility of running them again. So you need to check that list while your device is still running iOS 10.3 to be able to be sure that there aren't any important apps in there that you might still need before you install iOS 11. Okay? That's the critical issue.
If you buy a phone in iOS 11, does it actually contain should be updated?
Well, no, everything, it will download, if you restore from a backup of an old phone, and you had...
Not an old phone.
No, if you did, and you had 32-bit apps, it will try and download them and then tell you it can't, or not download them, or they'll download and not work. I forget. I'm not sure which. Okay, new feature. Nope, not like that. That's not the new feature. Screenshot. If I take a screenshot by holding down the right combination of buttons, you'll notice it does this little zoom down to the corner thing, and if I tap on that while it's still there, it brings it up and it gives me the ability to mark it up. So I can do things like, I'm concerned about this icon, what is it? So I can actually draw on it. I didn't want to do that, so is there an undo? Yes, there is an undo. Let's undo that one, and I'll make it red instead. What is this thing, and why is it on my screen? So you can actually just mark up your screenshots instantly, and then from here you can share it, in theory, and I can mail it or something like that. So I can actually take a screenshot with the same combination as before, which was home and power, I don't actually know what the screenshot combination offhand is on the iPhone 10 because it hasn't got a home button. I think it's side buttons. I think it's the side buttons in that case. You hold the right and the left button
I think it's one of the volume ups and
and down, and the other power is right. Yep.
How
But-
does the screenshot?
Hold down the home button and the power button at the same time. So normally you start holding one of them down, you push the other one, and then let go of them both.
How will you do that on 10?
Side buttons instead, and it makes a camera shutter sound if you've got the sound on, and then it temporarily shows it in the corner, and then while it's in that state, you can tap on it and enlarge it to mark it up. If you just leave it, it will vanish and be in your camera roll as it was before. Okay. And it even gives me a choice here. I don't actually want to keep it, so I can just delete it. That's quite cute. Yep, so that's one I hadn't actually bothered playing with yet. So now what I want to show you is the iPad, which has got rather more substantial improvements. So, new video recording again, and we will choose my iPad this time. Okay, the first one, if you have an iPad Pro and you have an Apple Pencil, you tap the screen of the iPad Pro while it's locked. You see it with his fingers crossed. Has that come undone again? No. And you're immediately in Notes and you can start scribbling with your pencil. So you can treat it like a notepad. Here's one I prepared earlier rather than keeping that one. Oh, yeah, no. I'll do this again, excuse me. Don't want you to see my passcode. Right. Let's bring that back up again. Yeah, ignore that. That's worked it out now. Yep. If I go into my notes, here's one I did earlier. That one. It's gone. Where's he gone? I should work it out. There we go. I was making notes on the speed at which I was getting with various wireless network adapters when I was testing one of the wireless network problems recently. So I just grabbed my iPad and started scribbling on the screen and managed to write all these handwritten notes. And interestingly, it's recognised my handwriting and picked up the fact that the title is Speed Test. So it actually has named the note automatically Speed Test. So it's actually able to do handwriting recognition. Anybody here remember the Apple Newton back in back in the 1990s? That feature's finally made it to the iPad. They can recognise handwriting and interpret it to some extent.
Quite good, looking at that ST.
Yes, exactly. So
Not bad.
it's done a pretty good job of it. So yeah, so that's one feature they've got, but that's Apple's Pencil specific. The obvious thing that's different if you're familiar with the iPad is that the dock on the bottom of the screen here on iTunes is grumbling at me. Let me just deal with that. Yeah, don't care. Yeah, I don't care. Go away. Thank you. Right, the dock looks quite different. It looks more like a Mac one. So rather than having 5 or 6 icons along the bottom, it's now got a variable number of icons that you can actually customise. So you can actually pick things up and put them in the dock. So I can just drag and drop it in there with my finger.
The other iPads, you could add an extra one.
Yes, you could, but you couldn't have very many.
No, I think it was only one.
Yes, and now I can do...
Oh, and they all squeeze up.
They all squeeze up, same as the Mac pretty much. I can just pick them up and drag them in there.
Yeah,
And interestingly, here's one of the new features, one of the drag and drop things. If I tap and hold on this one, I have to use both hands for this. If I tap and hold on one of these, and they start wobbling, I can go tap, 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 select these all at once and drag them all down and put them in the dock. So you can do multiple selections. Now I didn't actually want those all in the dock, so let me just drag them out.
is there an undo?
I want to keep music, so I do want that one, I do want that one, I do want that one, I don't want that one. Don't want that one. Wait, I have to actually wait till it enlarges. That's what the trick is. I don't normally use FaceTime on the iPad, so that can come out. That takes me down to 6. I don't usually use messages on the iPad, so that can come out. That's more or less normal. So,
2 Vodafone ones here, one on the bottom, one
yep,
No.
the right-hand side is recently used applications. So the last 3 apps that I've launched are automatically showing up there. So that's why those icons are there. So that's not one I've put there. That's just happened automatically. So that's one of the differences on the iPad. Another difference is that if you swipe up from the bottom, you get the new application switcher view, which lets you scroll through all your recently used applications. and it's got the control centre on the right-hand side. You'll notice that's similar to the iPhone one. It's the same sort of general layout change. The other thing you can do, if I go into, for example, Photos, oh, it's already done it. Hang on, let's just undock. How do I get now? This is the tricky part that I haven't quite worked out the user interface for yet. Is how do you get rid of one of these applications that are in here? Take it away to the side. There we are. It's good. Let me get just Photos. If I want to look at Photos alongside another application, before you had to bring out the side view thing and scroll down through application after application until you found the one you wanted, and then you had to drag it around the place. If I'm in Mail and I want to look at some photos, all I do is I slide my finger up, which brings the dock up. I can then pick up Photos and drop it on the right hand side. And that gives me the photos in slide over mode, and then if I simply tap and hold and drag on the top of that, it puts it in split view mode. So now I've got the adjustable split view, and if I want to write a new message, for example, I can come in here, write a new message and say, I want to come on here and say, where's that photo? That's a good one there. Let's just drag, I've got to pick it up first. There we go, drag that photo in there, please. There we are, one photo. Or if I want several, I can say, isn't she gorgeous? Let's just go tap, tap. No, it's not working as I expected. I was expecting that to do multiple selection. Start dragging and then tap them, that's what it is, yep. So I can drag multiple photos into my email by using that multi-drag and drop feature from one side to the other.
Very windy.
And this is my new cat, our new cat we've got recently. So Minerva, she's called. So anyway, just wanted to show you the sort of drag and drop and side by side thing there. Don't need to keep that at the moment. Now, the other related features, if I use the application selector feature again, you'll notice that Mail and Photos are now grouped together. It's remembered the fact that I was using that pair of applications side by side, and if I go into either one of them again, it will bring up the same pair. So I bring up Photos and it brings up Mail at the same time. So it attaches them together until I deliberately aim for the middle bit here. I've got to actually aim right, that's the tricky part. No. Come on, I'm trying to find that middle bit. I find this, there we are, I've just got to move my finger up a bit, that's all it is. Drag it out and then I can get rid of it. So that may make more sense in landscape rather than portrait, but you get a general idea anyway. You can have basically preferred pairs of applications, retain the fact that those are being used together consistently. You can drag and drop stuff between them. The other major new feature on the iPad, and it's also on the iPhone, I just didn't show it there, is the Files application. Now, at the moment, I don't have a lot of things on my iPad that have support for this. But there are, in effect, what the Files app does is it gives you a single place to access all of your online cloud storage accounts. So I've got iCloud Drive, Dropbox, I've also got a Box account which I haven't used, so I can easily access the contents of, why do I need to authenticate, you silly thing? I'll just look at iCloud Drive, that's easier. I can easily look at the iCloud Drive contents from here, and of course this is all drag and droppable. I can actually pick up an icon, a document, and drag it into something if I want to. So I can, that looks like an email. I can just say come down here, swipe up there, put that into Mail, then I want to, what's that going to do? I need to actually write a message probably. So if I come back out of there again, go into Files, try that again, swipe up, Mail, there we go. Now I should be able to drop that in there as a PDF. There it is. Yep. So I can, as long as you get your head around how the gestures work, which I'm still learning, you can actually drag and drop things around from the Files view. As applications add support for it, the Files will have the capability of applications on your iPad actually giving you access to apps that are documents that are stored in that application. At the moment there isn't all that much of it. In fact, I see PDF Expert is the only one and I haven't really used that, so the rest of them are actually cloud services. On my iPad, there it is, on my iPad is one application, Pixelmator. So there is nothing in there either. So it says there's one item, but I can't see anything. So as over time, other applications will be added to that list. So at the moment, I don't have very many. Okay, now any other obvious features of the iPad stuff? So it's pretty much all the drag and drop stuff. If you have an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil, there's a whole bunch of markup features relating to that, which I won't bother going into. If you don't have an iPad Pro, you don't get the Apple Pencil support option, of course.
Do you want to show them the keyboard changes? Tweaks?
Can't easily because it doesn't
Yes,
work
it
on
doesn't
here.
go on
What can I do? Yes, I can. If I go into, what was the app I used? I need an iPhone app. I can show it in that. My Vodafone? Yeah. Go into feedback. Will it do it? No, that's not going to work. I'm just trying to remember how I did a. That takes you to the website. No, I'm trying to remember. I need to find an app which actually doesn't use the iPad Pro's native keyboard. There's a new feature on the keyboard. If you have any model of iPad other than the big iPad Pro, that you now have the ability to flick down on the keys, and it gives you the shifted version of it. So it's like it's got letters with a little wee number above it, and you just flick down on it and it gives you a number or whatever it might be, so it's much faster to access some of the symbols. It doesn't do that on the iPad Pro because it's big enough to give you a full-size keyboard. Sorry, the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. It does on the 10.5 and it does on the 9.7. So Shane can demonstrate it, but I can't easily. That's one thing that's changed. If I just have a quick glance at Apple's website just to see if there's any other major features I've forgotten. That'll do. Just to show you any other that's sort of relevant. So we've got files, I've talked about the dock, I've talked about multitasking is mostly talked about, drag and drop, I've shown you some of those. Apple Pencil if you have an iPad Pro, I haven't bothered to demonstrate it, but you can do markup all over the place with it. I've shown you the Instant Notes feature briefly.
Instant document scanner.
Oh yeah, document scanner. If you have any iPad will get that feature. If you have, I think, or is it iPad Pro only? I think it's everywhere. Basically, if you have a document, it recognises the edges of the paper as long as the background's got, and it lines it up and it aligns it correctly automatically in the camera and takes a photo of it and gives you a form that you can then mark up using an Apple Pencil if you have an iPad Pro. So you can actually take a photo of a form, fill it on the iPad and email it to somebody. That sort of thing, which I haven't tried yet. Scan and sign, yes, so it crops the edges and removes any tilt or glare and that sort of thing. So that's quite cute. Oh, there's the quick type keyboard. You can see the picture there. So you can see it's showing the these extra little symbols at the top there. So if I demonstrate with my finger what I would do, if I just tap that, it would give me an M. If I go flick down like that, it would give me a colon instead. So it's just a slightly different gesture to get the symbols. You can, of course, still use the shift buttons and mode switch buttons and things if you want to, but for at least for numbers and things, it's an awful lot faster. I did use it briefly. It's only on the iPads, not on the iPhone, and you simply flick your finger down on the key rather than tapping the key. So it's actually quite easy to operate. Yep. Sorry?
Yeah. If you need to have a look at it, you can look at my.
Shane's one will do it. I haven't updated my older iPad yet, so I can't show it on that one. That was the quick typing. It's that one. Oh, augmented reality. If you have a new enough model, they've added a AR support, but that's pretty much limited to iPhone 6s and newer, I think. So my iPad Pro is the only one that can take advantage of that, so I haven't bothered to look at that yet. Live photos, yay! Loop, bounce and long exposure, yep. More filters and things in the camera. The new App Store I showed you briefly. Messages. Siri's got more features. Again, you can go and look at Apple's website if you want to find out more about this stuff rather than me. I can just show you the obvious ones. Apple Music's got sort of what your friends are listening to if you set it up correctly. AirPlay 2 if you have the right hardware, which currently is only a 4th generation or newer Apple TV. you can actually have an iOS device playing sound simultaneously to multiple speakers, which you couldn't do before. So that's sort of coming. Control Center with customization. Lock screen is reorganised, and it's now the notification thing is sort of tied into it in a different way. Mentioned that one. If you're overseas, because this is not available in New Zealand yet, it now has internal maps of airports, which could be handy in train stations and things like that. Shopping centres, that's what they specifically highlighted, yep. Restaurants and that sort of thing. There's a one-handed version of the keyboard on the iPhone, which I haven't tried hunting down yet. If you tended to type with one hand rather than both. Oh, that's quite a cute feature. If you have multiple devices, it has a pairing facility to, when you're setting up a new iPhone, if you have an existing one, you hold them near each other and it automatically recognises that it's got another iPhone wanting to do setup, as long as they're both running iOS 11, and it shows a kind of a, imagine like an atom cloud image on the screen that you point the camera at, and once it's recognised it, it says, yes, that's right, and it transfers all data across and basically transfers your setup without having to type in all the complicated Apple ID passwords and all that sort of thing. So it's much easier to set it up quickly. Yes. Yep, okay, so that's pretty much iOS 11. So there's quite a lot of new stuff there, which we're going to take some getting used to. And as I said, I didn't want to go into macOS High Sierra in detail tonight because I'm not allowed to show anybody it yet because I'm still under non-disclosure until tomorrow morning when it gets released. So is there anybody here who is actually thinking they're going to rush out and install the new Mac operating system in the next week? Because I recommend you do not. I have, courtesy of Vodafone and all the other stuff I've had to be doing, I haven't had time yet to do a full test of the new operating system. I have run it briefly just to see what it looked like and get some ideas on how it handles some of the transitions. Like, for example, if you have a Mac with a solid-state drive, Apple's already told us that it will automatically convert the file system to the new one rather than the existing one. And that may introduce more compatibility problems. So depending on which Mac model you've got and what sort of drive it's got internally, you may get subtly different effects if you change the new operating system.
If you've only got a Fusion drive, it'll still be okay.
Well, it will still use the old file system, which means they had originally intended to switch to the new one, but they haven't quite got it working yet. So for Fusion drives or hard drives, so at the moment Fusion drives and hard drives stay on the old file system, but solid-state drives go to the new file system. And I haven't upgraded this machine obviously yet because I'm still demonstrating stuff on it, and I don't want to do that until I've had some time to test software. But I have a spare Mac, which I managed to get from Reg Milson last year when he didn't need it anymore. And I've recently upgraded that machine so it now has a 1 terabyte solid-state drive inside it, which I bought, the third-party one. And that was recognised by High Sierra as a solid-state drive, so it's not just Apple ones, it will do it for third-party upgraded solid-state drives as well, and they get replaced with the new file system. It's hard to tell the difference so far, but it's likely to have some effect on some software which doesn't understand it properly, that sort of thing. But I can't say much about application compatibility because I haven't tested anything yet.
I read there is a problem with Microsoft Office.
No, there is not a problem with Microsoft Office. The problem is that Microsoft Office 2011 is going out of support next month, and Microsoft is not going to support it on the new file system, on the operating system. So basically, if you're running Office 2011, Microsoft gives you absolutely no guarantees it will work if you upgrade your computer to High Sierra. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work, it just means they're not going to support it. There's a subtle distinction, which is already the case with many other applications which are old and out of date. So for example, I'm still running FileMaker Pro version 11, which stopped being supported 3 or 4 operating systems versions ago. It still runs under Sierra. I can't tell you yet whether it runs on High Sierra because I haven't tried it, but that sort of thing. It's just a question of whether or not it will work. Microsoft won't tell you, and they won't help you if anything goes wrong with it, because it's no longer supported at all as of next month, and they're basically not interested in doing anything else with it, and they're not going to go to the trouble of making sure it works properly. They want you to buy Office 2016 or Office 365 in effect.
Yeah, I just bought 365. I haven't installed it yet because they haven't. It won't. Microsoft won't email me back my my key or what.
Oh, okay.
It is. For some reason, the return email didn't work.
Okay, because I've signed up twice to the free trial, which you can do a year apart. So I was testing it a year ago, and I tested it again. I ran it long enough to decide I didn't want it, and I uninstalled it again both times. But I was able to. That worked fine. They emailed me a key in both cases, so there must just be some glitch with the email, I expect. Yeah, so there's all sorts of grey areas yet as to what other software won't work. So the big problem is anything involving disk utilities is going to have a problem with the new file system. So both of the major third-party cloning software, Carbon Copy Cloner and SuperDuper, they've released new versions that provide basic support for the new operating system, but both of them are advising on their website, don't rush into this because we don't know how this works properly yet, therefore we aren't entirely sure we've got all the details right, because Apple has not published all the technical information they need. So they can't reliably create a bootable backup, for example, yet. Is that sort of level of detail. So there's various third-party bits of software that need to catch up. If your set of applications is almost entirely what Apple supplies with the computer, it's probably fine. But if you have any third-party software, the more third-party software you've got, the harder and harder it's going to be to work out which of these things is going to have problems and which ones are not. So I have rather a lot of third-party software, so I'm going to have to spend at least a week playing with everything on my spare computer to see what works and what doesn't, and then update things as I go. And I've already got quite a few software updates that add support for High Sierra. So I'll be able to report in a few days' time on things like, well, I don't use Office 2011 heavily, but what I have used seems to work or doesn't, and that sort of thing. And there'll be lots of reports online about that sort of thing. At the moment, it's a bit quiet because nobody's really allowed to talk about it. So if there is anything in particular that people are concerned about, then let me know, and I'll see if I can find out about it. But there's probably places online that have already gathering that sort of information from early reporters. And my plan is that I'll have that machine running and have had enough experience with it by the Capity meeting next week that I'll be able to at least do a brief demo of High Sierra then. But for the most part, it doesn't look any different apart from desktop background. So you can see some subtle differences in things like the way file copying behaves because of the new file system, but that's rather subtle. So there isn't a lot to look at. It's mostly the under the hood improvements and changes.
So there's no real good reason to rush out and install it.
No, and the usual caveats apply. Basically, if you upgrade very quickly, you're more likely to run into compatibility problems with third-party software. You're more likely to run into early bugs that Apple hasn't fixed yet or hasn't even found yet. It's best to wait a little bit and see what shakes out. And then, like I upgraded to Sierra when 10.12.1 came out. I just didn't get round to it in time to do it with 10.12.0. And I regretted it because there were several of my old applications which misbehaved, and they kept misbehaving in 10.12.2. Was like I started out with 3 annoying problems, which went down to 2 annoying problems, which went down to 1 annoying problem, and then they're all sorted out by 10.12.4 or something like that. So, those applications are rather old and obscure ones, and most people wouldn't have been affected by them. So, for most people, it was fine to upgrade almost immediately to Sierra. The only concern really with High Sierra is this new file system and what implications it will have for utility software in particular, and more likely to have compatibility problems with third-party software that does unexpected things or expects the file system to behave in a particular way. For example, the order in which names are sorted is different if you have non-English characters, if you have foreign languages and things like that. It has different rules for how it orders things, and some applications may not cope with that because they are expecting things to appear in a certain order, and if they appear in a different order, it can't understand where it misses some files out or something like that. So there's some potential risks in that sort of area.
So, David, I've got a Reunion version 9 on my computer, which is obviously on the old operating system now. It has a child version on the phone. They talk to each other. If I update one, it puts it onto the other.
Yep.
If I upgrade to the new system 11 on the phone, will they still be able to talk to each other?
That will depend on the individual app. So the question is whether the Reunion app itself is compatible with the version you're running on the Mac, not which operating system it's running on. So the app itself has to be compatible with the operating system, and they might release a new version of the app which requires the new operating system. If they do that, but if they just release an update and it's still runs on the old operating system, you could try it out now. The problem is you can't go back again easily if you update an app. I mentioned this in the magazine as well, that Apple's new iTunes 12.7 has now completely eliminated the ability to manage iOS apps on the computer, which it means that I still have a pending software update, so I'm not installing iTunes 12.7 until I work out what on earth to do about it. So that's iTunes. I'm still sticking with the old version temporarily, because I like to keep copies of all my apps so I can reinstall old versions if I need to, which most people probably don't bother with. But I have been in that habit for many, many, many years. So I've got backup copies of nearly everything. So I don't like to break habits. So I need to work. But it's probably a losing battle because Apple is likely to break the mechanism for older versions of iTunes anyway at some point, because they'll turn it off at the other end. So well, I'll live with it when the time comes. I'm just not happy about it. So while it's still not a problem, I'm avoiding the issue.
When I got back, I was beset with update stuff, and I haven't read my email for over a week, so I didn't put it in the morning. And so I was just waiting and just updated you.
Yeah. I mean,
and I read your email.
Yeah, the problem with iTunes, if you are in a situation where you want to get back to iTunes 12.6.2 because you really need the application management feature, I do have instructions on how to do it. It's not straightforward, but if you're not actually in the habit of managing your iOS apps on your Mac, then it doesn't matter. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I discovered this just after I posted my big thing on the new versions and everything, and then I didn't know about this feature because nobody told us about it. So then I had to immediately send out a warning in case anybody it was affecting anybody. So apologies for the screed of emails by my usual standards to all members, but yeah. Okay. Any questions? Oh, any last questions? So the plan is that next month we'll be talking about High Sierra, because I'll actually be able to run it by then and maybe even running it on my main computer. If not, I can definitely run it on the spare one with all my applications. So at least all the applications that don't require activation. So that may be a problem with Microsoft Office, for example, because it will it's fussy about only running it on one computer. So I'll try it briefly, but I won't be able to run it for an entire month, unfortunately. But I can try Office 2008, and that will give us a good idea. Because if that works, then 2011 is probably okay.